Good evening. Laura Donnelly here from Dancing with Ease, Body Brain Balance. And it is, I think it's day, I didn't look at my thing, whether it's 157, 158. It's not showing up on my thing anymore, which is kind of a drag, but it's long. Whatever it is, it's long. And I wanted to talk today about feeling our emotions, not being our emotions. Now, this might be a game of semantics for you. But I find that the words I use influence how I am. And my physical response to the words that I use changes my state of being. And so, if I say, I feel angry, I am doing something. I am feeling something. I am not that thing. I am feeling angry. I am not anger. I am not angry. I don't have to be angry in order to feel angry. These are fine shades of doing, being, and feeling in the world. And if I take responsibility for how I speak about what's going on with me, and I take responsibility for how I act, and I take responsibility for owning the way I feel, but not having to do anything about it. I can feel some way and not act on it. Sometimes trickier and harder to do than it is to say. But to separate those things out allows me choices and degrees, both degrees of feeling and degrees of action. If I just say that I'm anger or I am angry, then I feel justified in stomping around my house, maybe throwing things around, tossing stuff on the floor, whatever. But if I say I feel angry, then I'm like, what made me feel angry? What arose in my system, or what event or memory happened that caused that feeling to arise? Then I'm going on a discovery journey, and I'm less angry because now I'm curious. And being curious shifts how I feel. I'm investigating, and I'm what archaeologists do. I'm digging around in what's happened, what's happening, and by looking at this, I'm influencing what will happen. And this is really important, and it's important for happiness and well-being. It's really important for happiness and well-being. If I become my feelings, and my feelings just arise, then I have no control over how I am. And the idea that I've been thinking about is that the feelings are like the ocean, right? And if you stand right at the edge of the water where the waves are coming in, so that they wash over your ankles and then slip back out, you get wet. Your feet get wet, but your whole self doesn't get wet. You feel the water. You feel the wet. Maybe you feel the sand in the water if the ocean has been churning. Maybe there's some icky seaweed or yummy seaweed or good seaweed that slips by your ankles and feels kind of tentacly and creepy. Maybe there's a little fish in there that you feel kind of swimming by you and maybe nibbling on you. All of this happens, and the water touches you and the water flows away from you. And this is how I like to think about my emotions, is that they might sweep through me or around me, but they aren't me. They aren't my essential self. They aren't how I have to be now or how I have to be in the future. I can feel them, and some of them feel wonderful, right? Happiness, joy, excitement, even anticipation. I was going to talk about anticipation today, but I switched to emotions because for me, this distinction, this gives me personal responsibility, right? I am personally responsible for how I act in the world, for what I put out, and I'm also responsible for what I take in. Now, I'm not responsible for what comes at me, right? All kinds of stuff comes at us from everywhere. But I can duck. I can get my badminton badminton racket out and pop whatever it is back to where it came from. I can catch it. I can look at it. I can say, oh, this relates to something in me. Maybe it's like a snowball and it comes whizzing at me and I smack it and it shoots into 1,000 pieces. I have a million options for how I respond to what comes at me. And absorbing it and swallowing it and making it mine, those are just some options. They are not mandated, they're not given, they're not necessarily going to happen. And at this point, I would tell you probably they aren't good for me. And so I come back to myself. I come back to my body-brain balance. I look at how that makes me not like Teflon, but it makes me ready. I'm in a state of aware readiness. So when stuff comes at me, I'm able to move with it, away from it, towards it, in a way that is most effective for me. And part of that has to do with emotions, because people fling emotions out into the world, left and right, all the time. And I used to do that. Oh, I would get mad and I would storm up the stairs in my house, and I lived in Staten Island, and I would be, noisy, and this happened and that happened, blah, 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 and I would want to enroll everybody who was there in my feeling, because I couldn't feel my feeling without having it overtake me, so that I felt like I had to be that feeling. And so now, if I feel a feeling come up and I feel it, that I start to blend into it, right? Because this isn't my thing. That feeling doesn't have control over me. I give it control. I decide to join it rather than to stand beside it. So if I think that I can stand beside my feelings and allow them to be, and allow them to rise up and die down, like the wave comes in and it goes back out, then I can experience every feeling I want to feel without losing myself in that feeling, without becoming obnoxious to be around, which is no fun. And this is the kind of thing that when we're parenting kids, we're trying to teach them. And it's just a tricky thing to learn. Especially for kids, because kids are kind of, they're like they're like new. Everything is new. And so, like, the first time they are disappointed, like if they're hungry and they don't get fed and they get angry because they're hungry, then they scream and cry and their whole little body screams and cries and they're noisy and their face is all scrunched up and their mouth is yelling and yelling and their little body is just full of tension. But as they grow older, we can start to help them differentiate between what's happening, what they're feeling, and how they choose to act. It's really good to start with ourselves. Fix that, sort it out with ourselves first, and then gradually how this works in us will start to spill over to how it works with people in our family. And we can gently untangle the emotional fusion that happens. And so I think this fusion happens when we think we are our emotions. It's when the water, the emotions are watery and fluid, and they conduct feeling like, how it conducts electricity. And we have receptors in us, and we are able to connect to that. So this is a little bit part of being empathetic, is to see someone who is experiencing a certain feeling and to be able to relate to it, to understand what they're going through. But if we just dive in and merge into that with them, that just magnifies their sadness or their happiness. It's Here's part of the problem is when with happiness we think this is a good thing to do. And so we practice doing this. And then with some of the other emotions, envy or jealousy or rage, then this is what we have done with emotions, and we are kind of stuck doing it with the emotions we don't like as well as some of the emotions we do like. But I find when I feel myself getting carried away, if I come back to myself, I can vicariously experience that joy. I can remember the joy and I can stay present. I don't have to, how girls squeal all the time. Oh my heavens, how young girls squeal when they're happy. Honestly, I'm like, that hurts my ears. Just be happy. Don't squeal about it. And a part of the squealing, you know how kids are. Then one squeals and the other one squeals, and then suddenly the whole thing just takes over like a bunch of birds or something. So it's okay to get carried away. It's just good to notice it and come back. So those are some of my thoughts on how to feel emotions rather than to be the emotion. And when I have myself in a place that I can choose my response, then I have tremendous freedom. And I'm able to not pour my emotions out onto other people. So that's the thoughts for today of strange and interesting times. I hope you are well, and I will see you next time.